The world does not know John Sykes as a household name. You may not know John Sykes, and that's fine. If you are a fan of rock guitar, do yourself a favor and discover John Sykes. Anybody that knows anything about rock guitar playing or is a rock guitar player absolutely revered this guy, rightfully so, for his ability. British, came out of the new wave of British heavy metal.
And by the dawn of the 80s, new bands thriving on speed, power, and volume were poised to usher in a new era.
The new wave of British heavy metal was just really a term we invented in the office one afternoon. There were a lot of young, exciting British rock bands coming out of the woodwork, coming out of the metal work, if you like.
You know them, you love them. They were one of the big bands of the new wave of British heavy metal. And then the other cool thing about this band is John Sykes, the guitarist, known for moving on to Thin Lizzy and then moving on to Whitesnake, Blue Murder, solo albums as well. He came from Tygers of Pan Tang, so that's really cool as well. On this, you get essentially songs that are that sound like a band that's actually has a really good chance of making it. I mean, both, you know, Tygers were signed to MCA. MCA was that good label, was participating in the new wave of British heavy metal really strongly. These riffs are very note dense. John Sykes does a lot of like cool riffing on here.
Tygers of Pan Tang, we heard him on the album. We were hooked on it, but Hellbound is just rip-roaring. New wave of British heavy metal with a next-level guitar player. He was up there. Like, it was like Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, and John Sykes. He was on that level as far as a shredder.
And John Sykes was a big influence to me when I was developing. I heard the Tygers of Pan Tang. I was really into the new wave of British heavy metal. It was very innovative as far as heavy metal and rock rhythm guitar went. John Sykes was the first guy as a lead guitarist, at least the first guy who was under my radar, who was just playing mind-boggling guitar in that context. It was like, this was a game changer for me. So he was like the first guy in that genre that I heard that was like, wow, these lead guys can really take an exciting part of the band sound. And he was an extremely important influence to myself and a lot of the people that I've met over the years playing metal.
Like I say, the guitars are super heavy on it. It's recorded hot and distorted. I think the songs are really strong on it. It's essentially, it gives it almost like a conceptual feel where the songs are a little less frantic and scurrying than on Spellbound, a little less note dense, but I think they're big and stadium rocking. I've just always liked it for moving ahead into moving a little away from the absolute rote early version of new wave of British heavy metal and almost embracing that feel of when Whitesnake started getting less bluesy and more Kiss-like.
After I'd left the Tygers, I had to fulfill part of the contract was to do one single. So I asked Chris to ask Phil if he wanted to do it with me, and he said yes. So
he very kindly said he'd do this single with me. We got together with a producer called Chris Tangaridis. That was the first time we met each other, and he quite liked me, and I was really excited to meet him because he was... prior to this, when I used to just play in club bands and things, all I used to do was play Thin Lizzy tunes. And so it was a real buzz for me to see Phil. I remember when I first met him, it was really exciting to see him, and even just to get in a car with him and watch people's expressions on their faces as we drove past and they'd see it was Phil was just unbelievable. Shortly after that, he asked me if I'd like to take the place of Snowy and Thin Lizzy, which was just a dream come true for me. So naturally I just took the gig straight away. We'd flown back from Dublin back to London, and it was only a matter of 3 days or something, and we was in the studio starting the Thunder and Lightning album. Well, I didn't know any of the tracks. I just walked into this big studio. It was the first time I've been in a studio like that. It was a great studio, Eel Pie Studio, Pete Townsend owns it. And I walked in, I was overwhelmed by everything. So what we did was, everyone was just standing in the actual studio part where the band, there was Brian up on a drum riser and we was just standing around. Scott was sitting down and I was sitting down. Phil was there and he just said to me, this was the first time I hadn't even played with a band before this, and he'd already asked me if I wanted to join, just from the work we did with the single. So he said to me, just play a riff, any riff you like. And I just started playing a riff and he said, yeah, we used that bit, and then we just started jamming around for about an hour or something, you know. And an hour later we had Cold Sweat, which turned out to be the single off the album, you know, which was doing quite well. He was a genius in the studio.
Howie would sometimes be doing a song and I'd be in the back room just watching and listening and thinking, man, I just don't see how this thing's gonna come together. And then he'd start laying his vocals down and harmonies and different things, and all of a sudden the whole picture would come alive. It would be like he knew exactly where it was going and what he was doing. I mean, he was the leader of the gang, you know.
Perhaps the topic on everybody's mind, the Thin Lizzy split. Tell me about it.
I thought you were aiming Andrews. Yeah, we're splitting up.
Why?
Because we want to.
Do you? Well, why not split then when Snowy left and, you know, as opposed to getting John in and starting all over again just for a couple of months?
Because we felt John was better. And we thought that we'd give it a go with John. Establish him as our protege and let him go on and do great things.
Well, how did Darren and John feel about this? This is their claim to fame?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. Well, so what about these rumours that it could...
Thunder and Lightning album sees John Sykes come into the band, playing guitar and adding vocals, and having quite a big influence, I think, for the good.
What Sykes was a modern heavy metal guitarist. He was flashy, he was flamboyant, he belonged to the 1980s era.
Tonight is the first time that we played together, you know, with John and the band. Big round of applause, John Sykes on the guitar. Chances on the outside, looking really slim. Feel lucky on the inside. Cold stone summer and cold stone sweat, $1 bag of money. Take a little money, nothing left to lose. I can be a heavy metal.
John Sykes brought something that I really like into the band, and with the texture of the keyboards as a backdrop for that, I think it's a really nice sort of interface, a new interface and a new vibe and a new sound, which sparked Lynott to sort of write some good songs. So I think that the songwriting was a real return to form.
You know, John's a fireplug, man. He's a fireball out there. He can play 1 million notes a second, or he can you can slow down and play some really tasty things.
There are those that turn to heaven. There are those that ask questions why. If God is in the heavens, why does God let children die? We are chosen, we are one, we are frightened of no one, and no one wins the war. This is the way, this is the law.
Lynott once again had someone to play off. He had that character there. He had someone who was going to rub him up the wrong way to some extent, challenge him. And the songs which came out on Thunder and Lightning, Cold Sweat, Thunder and Lightning itself, were fantastic. This was a real return to form.
Yeah, but when Sykes came in, the aggression was that, you know, because he was bringing the band back to life again. You know, he was really doing a lot. But it was too late by then. I mean, we called the shot.
The final lineup of Thin Lizzy, with John Sykes on guitar and Darren Warden on keyboards, was magnificent. You really would never have guessed that it was going to be the last series of shows that they played.
Here then are the mighty Thin Lizzy at their finest, performing before their home crowd with a power and passion that would never be equalled.
You out there? Thunder and lightning and Dolan. What? With the boys, waiting for the wicked to make a little noise. Thunderous roar, lightning fast, feeling the gears and we starting to blast. Feeling at the heaven like a bright wind, storming with the Saturday night whenever rock will fall. Like thunder. It's yours, like a llama.
I'm John Kolodiy. I formerly was a famous A&R guy. I was responsible for a lot of people's careers. So Whitesnake, they had David Coverdale, who was one of the great singers of the rock era. He led a really nice but incredibly average band. Bon Jovi set the tone for what Whitesnake had to be. I had met this guy, John Sykes. Between how he played and how he sung and what he looked like, it was just incredible. And I decided that I would put him with David Coverdale to write the next record.
Somebody told me in the middle of the Lizzy tour in February that Whitesnake was interested in me. But, like, I was having such a good time with Thin Lizzy that I wasn't even interested in Whitesnake. And I never particularly liked Whitesnake, to be honest with you. Not because of David or anything, because I've always liked his voice. I just thought Whitesnake was a little bit bland, and I just thought that the guitar players weren't really going to the new side of things. I like to look to the future.
I went over and met the guys when they were recording Slide It In over in Munich, actually. And I was still with Phil at the time, but, you know, they called a few times, and I ended up going over and meeting David and whatever, and jammed on a couple of things. And the next thing, he wanted me in the band or whatever, and I turned it down a couple of times, and he just kept up in the money. And finally I was like, okay, it, I'm in.
Yes, good evening. Konnichiwa, konbanwa. I'm married bass player. I'm John Sykes, I play guitar with Whitesnake. I'm David Coverdale and I smoke. Okay, thank you very much. I am very happy with these people. Completely, totally, meaningfully, deeply. Yes. 105. Okay. This is a song which allows me to introduce a new snake, and it gives you an opportunity to play a little bit for you. Tokyo, please welcome John Sykes.
Since that time, John, of course, has joined Whitesnake. The band are in this country next weekend, and John is in our London studios to talk to me this morning. John, first of all, welcome to Anything Goes.
Cheers.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Well, what about that transition period between finishing up with Thin Lizzy and joining Whitesnake? How much rehearsal time did you have to put in with the band?
What, with Whitesnake?
Yes.
Well, we just started rehearsing about a week ago, and yesterday we got the full production in, so it's going quite well. I think we're doing about 10 days rehearsing before the tour. We're starting on the 17th in Dublin.
Right. Now, you presumably would have had to learn all the guitar pieces, relearn them, or learn them for the first time, because you were used to playing with Thin Lizzy for the last 10 or 11 months or whatever amount of time you spent with them. How long did you personally put into those pieces?
Well, I live my life day by day, you know. I don't generally worry about too much. I never spent much time learning the songs. I'll just busk my way through till I pick them up, flying by ear.
Okay, that's rock and roll, all right.
And that is when John Sykes comes into the picture, just to replace Mickey, really. And partly as a guitar hero, much more in tune with what was happening in the rock scene at that time, you know, fantastic looking, you know, much more of a Eddie Van Halen type star guitar player than Mickey or Bernie had been, or Mel, you know, who were good players, but it didn't have that kind of incendiary excitement that was the thing in the mid-80s with guitar players.
Just an amazing, electrifying guitar player. And he just looked so cool. I mean, he was like a rock god. He's at the main, that Les Paul, the way he played. Oh my God.
On this road, no doubt about it, guilty of love, guilty of love, guilty in the first degree. Guilty of love. John Sykes.
I know that Whitesnake are very big in Japan and in Europe, and I heard on a BBC interview recently that you're going to go to America shortly. What's the situation for the band in America?
Well, Whitesnake, they're not too big in America. Everybody knows about Deep Purple and everything out there, so, I mean, if you just say, oh, I play with Whitesnake, then they don't know what you're talking about, you know, but if you say, well, it's like ex-Deep Purple and all this, and explain. But as a band it's called Whitesnake, they don't know anything about the band at the minute.
Okay. Well, in your earlier days, did you listen to Deep Purple? Because, of course, David Coverdale is the lead singer in Whitesnake.
Yeah, oh yeah, I used to listen to him a lot. I used to listen to him before David Coverdale joined him. I mean, I used to try and pick up all the Richie Blackmore guitar licks and everything a long time before that. But I loved the album Burn, what David did. Yeah. That was great.
This is slided in with remix versions of all the tracks.
Yeah, this is a US version that went out and has been wonderfully successful over there.
Remixed by Keith Olsen.
Yeah, that's right. But it also features John Sykes and Neil Murray, whereas the normal European one doesn't.
Good evening, dear. Good evening. Hang on, let me in the film. Good evening, this is the Sleaze Buckets from London. Welcome. I'd like to welcome you to lovely Texas here. The secret of the snake's success. Heather Gloss shampoo. It's handy for finding for brunettes. Brunettes. Supposed to be for black, but I got the bottle wrong. Oh, for blacks? Yeah. Now then, hello Canada.
Ruth, this is Neil Murray, our bass player. Not very good, but there you go. Come over and have a word with Neil. This guy's Dallas shirt, which just tells you we're in Dallas now. It's absolutely wonderful being on this TV show.
Whitesnake has always been, in my mind, a guitar-based band, and I've never worked with a guitar hero since Richie Blackmore. And of course, I think John's the freshest, most exciting guitarist I've heard for a long time. With image and everything, he's got it all covered. and he's exciting, he's interesting, and we're just about to start writing the new album. So I want to make it vocal and guitar-based band. It's going to be more exciting.
John Sykes, guitarrista do conjunto Whitesnake há ano, é considerado o homem mais bonito deste festival.
It's the closest thing. It's like you get a physical relationship with it.
John Sykes was the entire total package when it comes to guitar players. The guy looked great, he sang great, performed great, played great, guitar tone, unlike any guitar tone that I've ever heard. Unbelievable, the presence. And from a playing standpoint, I mean, when he breaks into a solo, it's everything, like everything you could want in a lead guitar in a heavy rock band, because Sykes has all the tricks, all the flash, all the speed, all the tone, the insane vibrato that he brings, but never at the expense of melody.
Describe yourself as a professional do-goer.
No.
In a word.
No.
Yes. John, you look as if you've had a heck of a night tonight.
Yeah, we've had a hell of a... Well, since about 2 o'clock this afternoon we started, and like keeping up with Phil's a hell of a task, so I'm trying to do my best here. I'm hanging in.
What brings you two together?
Well, I used to play with Thin Lizzy, and any time I come home, I come and stay up at Phil's place, so we just go out and have a ball all the time.
You're inseparable then?
Well, only girls separate us.
Have you seen any girls here tonight who are likely to separate you?
Some great-looking girls here. We're going to be working on it straight after this interview, I tell you.
Don't tell the wife.
But it was a great band, unbelievable band. You know, that was like one of my highlights of my career, being in that band, just being able to play those old great songs. We was going to call it for a while, you know, take a couple of years out and then maybe get back together again.
I'd like to take advantage of the fact that, you know, I'm solo, I'm free to work with whoever I want, so I'll try and get special guests. I like John Sykes or Brian Downey and Gary and, you know, just various different people, because I wanted somebody I knew.
I thought you might have asked John Sykes, actually, if he was...
Well, he was away. He was in Vancouver doing some stuff with...
Oh, he's played with Whitesnake, isn't he? Yeah.
So...
but Phil OD'd on some drugs and stuff, you know, he OD'd and passed away, so, you know, that went right out the window.
I still could cry about it today if I think too much about it. That's how much he impacted my life, you know. Phil was like a family member to me, you know.
I saw him about 3 months before he passed away, and Phil was his own man, very much his own man, and he took on what he wanted to take on, and he lived the life he wanted to live. I mean, we would fight a lot about it, you know, but I just think, I don't think Phil realized how sick he was getting, you know, so it was a surprise. He was a very strong man, you know, he had a very strong constitution.
Right.
And nobody expected him to pass away.
I'd say he was an unbelievable talent, an unbelievable friend. I think he was just a true gentleman and dedicated beyond belief to the work he did. He was the ultimate rock and roll star. I mean, people say Elvis was the king of rock and roll. Phil was the king of rock and roll.
When are you going to begin your work in the next album?
John and I will be writing in about 2 weeks' time for the next LP.
A huge element was me getting to work with John Sykes, extraordinarily gifted musician. He came with a bunch of ideas, I had a bunch of ideas. So I played these things to John and he took the riff to, you know, cosmic levels. John would come in with this intense, really intense. When he finished doing a take, he was red-faced with exertion. The only other person like that was Jimmy Page that I've seen dig really deep into the instrument, and you feel that you hear it and feel it on the record. Just unfolded really well. It was all the fates and the muses were aligned. For instance, me introducing an idea to John Sykes and then having a musical conversation which he answers with, "Oh, what about this?" And then I'll go, "Oh, great, that'll open a door to another idea," which makes for a perfect collaboration. Working together with John just made it extraordinarily special. We came up with super stuff, which fed the next 35 years of Whitesnake.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It actually evolves, and John's contribution to that guitar lick is just astonishing.
John and I have done the majority of the writing for the album. We did that sort of in the south of France and then over here too. Instead of sort of it being sort of one album, you know, sort of progression, it's the equivalent of 4 albums. It's the most exciting stuff. It really is. This time we're going to go all the way for it. This is the most important album we've ever been involved in. It's going to be the make or break album.
Sessions went really well with Mike Stone recording, but there got to be increasing tension between David Coverdale and John Sykes. And John Sykes, you know, was closer to Mike Stone or seemed to have a better relationship, and Coverdale started to get more and more unhappy about it.
We went and wrote the material together, and it was in France, and I went over with him, just me and him alone, and we wrote the songs for the album, and, you know, after that we flew out to Los Angeles because we moved management and was out here, and the record company was out here, so we both come out here, you know, and found Ainsley Dunbar because Cozy had just left. We went up and started recording the album in Vancouver in Little Mountain, you know, and we laid the backing tracks down and stuff, and he went in to start doing vocals and had a problem doing the vocals, and we all sort of wondered what was going to happen. So we took it, and then I decided it was probably the weather that was causing his throat not to work. So we come back down to Los Angeles and tried down here, and then we flew out to the Bahamas after that, and it still wasn't happening, and this went on for a couple of years, you know.
Couldn't sing the songs with Ron Nevison. I knew it was a mental thing. I was doing everything I could. Every remedy, I had every kind of holistic person. I did everything. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is now going on 2 years on this record. Geffen Records at the time was losing money because of a lack of delivery of the Whitesnake record. So this is like now it's the end of 85 and he thinks he has trouble with his voice. So I take him right down the street here to Joe Sugarman, best ear, nose, and throat guy in the world. He needed some kind of nasal surgery, so he had that done.
Finally, he finished. He went in and had an operation on his throat and sang the album and said to me, look, go to England and do your guitar, finish off the guitar, do the guitar solos, because you lay them down after the vocals. And I went to England and did that.
And when it was completed, I sat and looked very darkly at the people who'd taken advantage of me during my problem. So I moved them out of my life and closed the book.
The story is, he just sort of one by one fired everybody. The drummer finished up his parts, Ainsley Dunbar, and he got fired out of the studio, and then Neil Murray, the bass player, finished his parts, and he was history. And then I found out that the producer had been fired, and we were still in the middle of working on guitars, and I couldn't get hold of David anywhere, and he was staying in Los Angeles. I was finishing up guitars in London in a place called the Townhouse Studios.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get hold of him. I was ringing Los Angeles. He wouldn't return calls. He wouldn't pick up. And we'd spent a lot of time working on this record together, writing it and everything else. And so I finally ended up calling the label, John Kolodiy, the A&R guy over there, and asked him what the deal was. And I said, look, the drummer's been fired, the bass player's been fired, now the producer's been fired. I can't get hold of David, and I'm starting to wonder if I've been fired. And he said, well, it kind of looks that way, and David was just sort of sidestepping everybody and didn't want to talk to anybody because he owned the name Whitesnake anyway. Yeah. So, it was sort of out of our hands, and he knew he had a good album there, but, he took the ball and dropped it somewhere further down the road, so, But it wasn't a very pleasant parting, I hooked up with him later. I surprised him in the studio up in Los Angeles about 2 weeks later where they was mixing, and sort of had it out with him and asked him what the deal was and where the word had come from, and he didn't want to take any responsibility for it. He started pointing fingers at the label, and I said, well, let's go up to the label right now and find out who it is, and he didn't want to do that, and I almost punched him, and he locked himself in his car, and
man,
big pussy.
Big ugly scene, it sounds like.
But that was that. The thing was, we had a great writing working relationship, and we'd have had 4 or 5 albums done by now, but he killed a good working thing there. So
and he and John Sykes wrote one of the best records of all time. It sold 20 million copies, I think, at least. I don't think they ever talked again, ever. A Whitesnake with John Sykes would have been on the level of Bon Jovi and Aerosmith.
Jesus. I can't understand how, after this album's done and recorded, he listens back, how he can not say,
I gotta get more out of this guy.
I gotta keep this friend. I can't lose this guy.
I gotta get more out of him.
Yeah. How do you let that guy go like that? Well, they butted heads in the studio, and I also think Coverdale was intimidated by Sykes.
You're probably right.
I think it was a short-lived relationship. It was passionate, and they produced some great art, but it was never built to last because you got 2 alpha males and they just sort of clashed. And I think Sykes was the only one that probably eyeballed Coverdale and told him how it is. There are some rock stars that have a lot of yes people around them, but I think he was one of the few that just probably toe-to-toe would look him in the eye and go, mate, that's crap.
Now, just watching that video myself, I felt just a bit nostalgic because that lineup there, when it first, Cozy Powell, Neil Murray, John Sykes, when it first got together,
it was great.
Everybody was saying this has got to be the best Whitesnake lineup yet.
Yes, indeed.
What happened there?
Just the attitudes changed. The whole important thing to remember is that when I came up with the concept of Whitesnake, it was just as a vehicle for good rock and roll songs. It's not the Monkees or Duran Duran. If somebody leaves, it's like a million broken hearts. It's a musical outfit. And that's it. If an attitude creeps in and a personality wants to change what I want to go for, and any negative % of attitude comes in, then
it's not interesting to me anymore.
Right. I think most of the new material on the album, as far as I know, was co-written by yourself and John Sykes.
Yeah, when I sat down, John has never been known as a composer, and I encouraged him. That's all I can do, is encourage and inspire people to spread their wings and fly. If they decide to doo-doo in the nest, you know, I'm not prepared to clean it up.
Tell me about your new single, because already it's rocketed into the top 40 here in the UK. I hear it's doing very well in America, probably just about to break down the doors in Europe.
Yes.
But,
I mean, when that Whitesnake record came out, we were all just stunned. He really captured that audio real estate with a guitar tone and a playing style that created like a fever, you know, and he really has a stamp in his musical DNA, and he delivered so much. He was really a great player and a great guitar orchestrator. He came and he lifted the whole scene. He really did.
A journalist, Mick Walsh, talking about the 87 album, saying it wasn't just the best Whitesnake album, it was the best rock album of the era.
John soloing and playing on the 87 album is truly landmark stuff, and so influential to a lot of people I know, and yeah, I hope he's very proud of it, because I am, you know.
The track "Still of the Night" is one of the best, most epic rock songs of all time. The stop-start Zeppelin-esque riffs and the vocals, the mid-part, the kind of dreamy sequence, the race to the finish, the guitar solos, the production, the size of the audio-visual aspect of it. John Sykes created that. John Sykes did that. The vision, the sound. It's an immortal track.
To the public, the Whitesnake 87 record comes out. All those big videos on MTV, Is This Love, Still of the Night, Here I Go Again. You're seeing Rudy Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge, Adrian Vandenberg, Vivian Campbell. Not one of them played a note on the actual music. They're just miming to it in the video. They became the video version of the band. And that is a pivotal point in the John Sykes stories. Sykes is robbed of all of the acclaim and notoriety because he's not seen in the videos. He's not pictured with the band. Nobody knows it's him. He never got the acknowledgement and the credit for co-creating that record and playing that brilliant guitar throughout that record.
When you think of John Sykes, you should think of, I mean, he should be thought of in this, you know, as like maybe somebody like Slash. Everybody knows Slash. People should know John Sykes. You know, he's such an innovator in his style, and he was a full-on rock star.
Yeah, it's unfortunate he didn't really get his just due. I don't know if he ever will, because for the general public out there, it was all about Coverdale, it was all about the videos, and then, you know, all the guys on the video that you think they're the ones that are playing on the album. And unfortunately, he should have the Eddie Van Halen. He should be close to it to have that type of, you know, reputation where he's more of a household name.
Actually, we was like, you know, getting the dictionary out back to front, looking for a name and stuff, and there was trying to think of a band name's a nightmare, and Tony just said to me, look, why don't we just call it Blue Murder? Well, people in London say that, you know, that if someone goes mad about something, they say, oh, he was screaming Blue Murder, you know. It's like an old Cockney saying. And I thought everybody knew it, but evidently not.
You know, I didn't fancy going out of that and going into another situation where I was working for somebody else, and that could be done to me again, you know, especially when you've written the songs and you work so hard with somebody and closely, you don't expect to be treated like that. And I co-wrote all of them, except
some good tunes on there.
Yeah. Except for Here I Go Again and Crying in the Rain, which I rearranged Crying in the Rain quite a lot. Well,
You were surprised at the huge success that Whitesnake had for a while there?
yeah, I was pleased about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously the checks roll in, and that's nice. But, I don't know. I mean, I think it was a good album, and at the time there wasn't a lot out to rival the album neither, so that's pretty good.
Right.
You know, it was the right place, right time, right thing, you know. And plus, nobody was doing that sort of Still of the Night type stuff, and I think that broke a lot of new ground. It got a lot of kids back into the bluesy type of elements, you know. But, you know, it's just that. But that's what basically gave me the, you know, that gave me the strength to want to go and do something like this, you know.
No, he was great. He was great at that time. He was very focused and hungry and willing to prove himself because
ready to kick David Coverdale's ass with a band.
He didn't get the credit that he deserved from Whitesnake, so he had a lot to prove. So he was hungry.
This is really the top of the mountain for me for what John Sykes was all about, because this captures John's, not just his guitar prowess, the solos, the riffs, the arrangements, the production, but his voice.
On the Big Al Show number 3, welcome Blue Murder!
This is a song off of our debut album. We're a band called Blue Murder. The album's called Blue Murder. We're going to play a track called Billie for you. It was a midnight hour and a boy broke out of Frisco. What was scared, he was moving from the heat. The electric chair was a sample still, but they didn't take the time or care to see. It wasn't Billie. They call it public enemy number 1. They don't know what's going on. Yeah. Call them public enemy number 1. They don't know what's going on. See my girl, she's waiting there for me. I got some tea with the sirens waiting for the one thing they can see. So it's just me there. Oh no, no. Well, the racist car get away from me. I stop doing out. There'll be no more here for me. No, no, no. They call me public enemy number 1. They don't know what's going on with me. Yeah. They call me public enemy number 1. They don't know what's going on. Just you and me. Swear I will make you mine. Ain't no more
I went back to England and started writing for this album. I'd been in the studio a couple of months, and I had a bit of free time in there. I was having a break, and I rented the studio out to a guy to do some tape copying, and we just sat down and was having a chat and stuff, and he said to me, look, what would be the ideal situation band-wise for you? And I mentioned Tony, and it turned out that this guy was married to Tony's cousin.
Really?
So I said, can you get me a number? And he said, yeah. So the next day, he come back with a number, and I called Tony up and told him I liked his playing, you know, and what I was up to, and would he like to come up and listen to some stuff and have a jam? And he said, yeah, which is great, you know. So he came up that next day after that, or a couple of days after that, and listened to the tunes and started jamming. It sounded fucking great. So that's how I got Tony in, you know, he was pretty much in straight away.
How did you know this is the finest bass player in the world? The one and only Mr. Tony Franklin on bass! Come on!
Originally it was going to be Cozy Powell on drums, because I worked with Cozy prior, you know, on the Slide It In tour and stuff. You know, I was like 8 months into the project writing, and Cozy decided he wanted to get out and do some sessions and, you know, some other work, so he left, and then, as it turned out, Dio was playing in England, and Vinny Appice heard that I was looking for a drummer and called Carmine. So Carmine flew to England, and he called me up and said, oh, you're looking for a drummer? So I said, yeah, and I said, can you play like sort of John Bonham type stuff? And he said, fuck yeah. So we got in a car and drove up the next day, you know, and we started jamming. It sounded fucking amazing.
We played, it was like magic. It just fit together. And I remember John saying, man, you've got so many drum fills. Tony loved it too, so the next thing, well, you're in if you want it. I go, let's go.
I want you to scream, stomp your hands, stomp your feet, and clap your hands for the one and only Mr. Carmine Appice on drums!
And then we looked for singers, like forever. We went through all these singers in LA, you know.
I mean, the Ray Gillen, that went further, but that went further. Ray, we tried him on a bunch of songs. Probably were together for about 3 months, really trying to make it work. And it was because we wanted to make it work, because we love the guy, sweet guy, and obviously very, very talented. that it was musically, we were just slightly different. Ray's writing is different to what John's vision was. So John had a vision. There was a sound and everything, and there were some things that Ray did phenomenally. But there was some where John was showing Ray, and it was just like, it was right, it was perfect. And there's nothing against Ray, it was just a different sound and a vibe. Once again, every time John sang, it was exactly what it needed. So
we decided, me and Tony said, why don't we be a trio? You sing, you got the deal on your voice, and we'll back you up on, background vocals and playing. So that's what we did.
I never really wanted to sing. I mean, it's a pain in the ass having to sing all night. I mean, it is. It's a pain in the ass because you got, your throat. You can't party all night or do whatever you want to do. You got to stay up. You got to go to bed and get your throat rested, and it's a pain in the ass. But I mean, I'm doing it. I got to do it because I'm the only one with my voice. You love my voice, and you wanted to hear it, so I did it for Eddie.
Yeah, and his vocals, they were always on. It was like amazing. He obviously knew his arpeggios. He knew music, but really, he was gifted. Like, I think he had perfect pitch. He says, "I just see the notes, and then I just sing the notes." It was like he just has a complete visual reference of the notes, and he's like, and then you just go to it and do that. That's not how I work. I don't know. That sounds like someone that has like perfect pitch or close to perfect pitch.
Blue Murder.
Tell me where you want me, girl.
Jelly Roll came out and was starting to cross over and get a lot of airplay. MTV wouldn't touch it. And so because MTV wouldn't touch it, it didn't cross over to the mainstream radio and get all of that airplay. If it had done, I'm convinced that song would have been huge.
But it was a great record, and we went so much over budget. It was ridiculous. And it came out, I would have bet anybody my house, because we had Geffen, John Kolodiy, Bob Rock producer, me, Tony, and John, you know, Geffen Records. The only thing we didn't have was the right managers. And in those days, you needed it, you know, to control the band, to control the record company, and we didn't have it. So we released the first song, and we pushed them to make Valley of the Kings on MTV, you know, pushed them. It was the wrong song to push. Jelly Roll should have been the song, but we didn't do that, and became a mess, and nothing ever happened.
Well, what happened? There's always a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas with Blue Murder, and to be honest, it should have been way bigger than it was. And there were some mistakes that were made in hindsight. Not all of our own doing. Some of them, you know, things are out of your control. But I mean, that to me should have been the biggest band of that era. Valley of the Kings was had a huge push on MTV. But here's the thing. Valley of the Kings was not available for people to buy as a single. And it should have been, or it should have been a different song in hindsight.
We even did 8 shows with Bon Jovi, and we were jamming like BB-8, and the people were digging it. Women, girls, you know, the Bon Jovi fans. And it just didn't happen. Then we went to Japan. We were huge in Japan. Yeah. We did, Burn Magazine had a thing, the greatest trios all time is Jimi Hendrix, Cream, BB-8, and Blue Murder.
We just did a video. We got a hip clip of the week for 2 weeks on MTV with a track called Valley of the Kings. We just did a video for that because I wanted to establish the band as a rock band, you know, a heavy rock band to start with, you know, rather than go with the more commercial ones, which are like Billie and Jelly Roll and that, you know.
In a distant place of time and
Valley of the Kings, the guitar solo on that, the production, it's absolutely enormous. But it's his vocals. It's his vocals. This I felt was where it was all going to just be huge. But the album didn't sell as well as John probably hoped, and the label were kind of a bit disappointed. And the one after that, a bit shake up in the personnel, that didn't do well.
Yeah. And because it failed, and it didn't do well because it went UK number 45, and I looked at the chart history, it literally disappeared. I think it's only done, 300 to 400,000 copies.
And that's
Which would have been
worldwide.
Yeah, they were all poised for success. And when it didn't happen, I don't think he knew what to do. He was not expecting that. He wanted to stick it to Coverdale so badly. This album came out quite a few months before Slip of the Tongue on the same label. And that's always a weird situation when you've got these two competing factions.
And one of the conspiracy theories that John Sykes was putting out, he said that Geffen wanted this project to fail so they could force Coverdale and Sykes back together.
Everybody was bummed out, and we weren't working, doing anything. I wasn't on a salary, so I started working with Vanilla Fudge, and John didn't like that. He said, you got to just be in one band. I said, look, dude, I got to make money. I got a wife and 2 kids. I can't just sit around here, So we kind of split ways, and then...
in the meantime, a little band called Nirvana came out, changed to the music business and everything completely on its head. And so Blue Murder's music was then completely out of vogue. All of that was very tough for John. He put so much heart and soul into this. Yeah, financially he did fine, but once again, two situations where, he should have had the recognition for his immense talent, and both times it didn't happen, so it was a tough time for all of us. But, hey, you live to fight on another day.
Take it away. Would you play? Just get us out of that very nicely. The White Cliffs of Dover, the next single from Blue Murder.